If there is something that you would like to share during the training, feel free to write it in the chat, but I would like to ask you to keep your microphone muted. Activities where we will actually ask for your input, where you will be welcome to unmute yourself and feel free freely share your thoughts with us. So let's start with the practicalities. So all activities are saved on Padlet. You will find a link in the chat. You can easily access, especially for the first module, so all the articles that have been used as well for this module. You will see all the activities and all necessary points, all the Mentimeters and everything that we're going to be using. So you have the link in the chat. You can also scan the QR code here on the slide to have easy access to Padlet at any point. I would also suggest that you keep this Padlet open somewhere in the background at all moments, or just to save the link somewhere so you know how to access it and how to get it quickly. Just to do a quick recap of what has been done during last week's training. So you covered the topics of the digitization, digitalization, and digital transition, explaining the difference between the three. The thing is that with this training, we wanted to focus. We wanted to start from very basic level. So there is a lot of definitions in the course, and as you could already see, a lot of definitions can be very different. So we chose to focus on specific definitions to get some common understanding and to set the base for the overall training. We also went through the benefits and challenges of digital transition. So you could see that there are many benefits, but basically for each of those benefits, there is a corresponding challenge that is matching it. And we also covered the topic of the blended work method. So looking into how the offices are changing and overall how the field of work is changing. As for our menu today, we're going to be discussing digital skills and digital literacy. We're going to go over the EU competence framework, the DIGCOM framework, and we're going to be focusing on digital inclusion and exclusion and covering the points of how to design digital inclusive activities. First things first, let's start by defining some of the key terms. So like I told you before, we're going to be focusing on digital skills and digital literacy as a starting point. And like I said before, there are many different definitions. In the course, we decided to focus on the one that UNESCO is proposing. So back in 2018, UNESCO defined digital skills as a range of abilities to use digital devices, communication applications, and networks to access and manage information. This is a very broad definition. It can mean a lot of different things. We will see some examples further on. And then when we talk about digital skills, we always also have to talk about digital literacy. And by digital literacy, we mean the confident and critical use of a full range of digital technologies for, again, information, communication, and basic problem solving in various different aspects of life. Digital literacy is actually very focused with the basic skills, so basic digital skills. So the use of computers in retrieving, in accessing, and in storing and producing information, the way how the information is presented, the way how we collaborate online, how we communicate online. And when we talk about digital literacy, it's also important to mention the concept of digital citizenship. And for example, how to behave online, not to share our passwords everywhere, or to make sure that we don't use a simple DEA123 password everywhere, or whatever our first name is, in order to make our lives online more secure. But in any case, we're going to be talking more about digital literacy, digital citizenship on Wednesday. This is just something to kickstart the conversation. So now looking into the basic digital skills, I mean, as the name explains, those are the skills that are required for the basic use of digital devices and online applications. These skills are also considered as a critical component of this new set of literacy skills in the digital world. And for example, when we look into the basic digital skills, Here we're talking about knowing how to send an email or knowing how to connect to the Wi-Fi, or just also knowing how to turn the computer on. Then looking into the advanced digital skills, here we're looking into a higher level ability to use digital technologies in empowering ways. For example, the basic digital skills would be knowing how to send an email. But then if we look into the advanced digital skills, here we're talking more about the email marketing, or knowing how to use MailChimp or similar tools to actually yeah, just use email marketing in a way how it's good to be used and how we want it to be used. If we look into the context of NGOs or civil society organizations, or any type of organizations that is working a lot on different projects, for advanced digital skills, we can also look into the use of various project management tools, for example, Asana, or using Microsoft Planner or Trello, or many of these million apps that are there right now on the market, but also knowing which one is the best for you to use, so which one matches the best the requirements that you might be having, and also then knowing how the data is stored, how the data is processed, where this data is going as well. So all of these belong to the advanced digital skills. In the last months, not just in the last months, but in the last month specifically, with the boom of ChatGPT and generative AI coming on the big doors, even though it has been there for a while now, I think we all felt it very strongly coming with the ChatGPT. So the advancements of the AI, but also the advancements of the machine learning, big data analytics, all of these are changing the demand for skills. So all individuals need to have a certain level of digital skills and competences to basically be able to live and to work and to be informed, to access online applications in the digital world. Also, if we look into the banking system, most of us have an online banking app, and to know how to use it, you have to have digital skills developed. Of course, these digital skills are not developed in a vacuum, so they don't exist just as a separate, you have a digital skill and that's it. Digital skills have to be connected with other skills and abilities, such as literacy, overall literacy, not just digital literacy, and numeracy skills, especially critical thinking, problem solving, and collaboration skills. Like the example that I was giving you before about the use of project management tools, and the thinking about where the data is stored and how the data is processed. This is also where critical thinking is really coming into place. So again, digital skills are not something that exists separately from other skills. They also belong into this key competences, and they're it's necessary that they are developed together with the other skills. To make sure that we all have, by we all, I'm talking about overall citizens, overall staff of NGOs, civil society organizations, overall, everybody have the same understanding of digital competences and have the same understanding of digital skills. There is this framework that has been developed in the EU level, which is called the DigCom framework. So it is a digital competence for citizens framework, which is explaining which is actually providing the description of different competences according to the views that are expressed by European policies on the key life competences in education. The DigComp was first developed in 2013, and right now we actually have the DigComp 2.2 version, which is the most updated version. We're going to go in depth through the DigComp. You will also have the link in the chat to consult the DigComp on your own, and there is also the link on Padlet as well. But again, like I said before, what we want with this training is that we all have the same understanding of the basic concepts, and that we all leave the training with the same knowledge. Apart from DigComp, there are many other EU level competence frameworks like the Green Comp, Entrec Comp. I'm sure you heard about many of them previously. And the DigComp is the one that's most well known and most widely used at the European and international level. DigComp also provides a common language to describe the key aspects of the digital competences, and in that way it also helps different stakeholders to formulate policies and strategies on how to build these competences, which competences are the most necessary to have, to plan education and training initiatives to support development of these competences for different target groups. How to check the level of digital skills and digital competences, so how to assess the initial proficiency, but also how to progress throughout the development of the competences. As I said before, the DigComp was created as a response to the Council's recommendation of the lifelong learning key competences, which was issued back in 2006. You can see all the key competences here on the slide. You also have a QR code, which is going to bring you directly to the recommendation, and you can see that digital competence is one of the eight key competences. Together, so I mentioned before some other competence frameworks that were developed at the European level, DigComp, as well as other similar reference frameworks, is defining digital competences through certain dimensions and through certain dimensions. So we have the main area, which is the first dimension. Then after the main area, we look into the specific competences within each of these areas. So in total, we have 21 specific competences. And for each of these competencies, we also have the proficiency level. So there are 8 different proficiency levels. You will see them very soon on the slide. This is again just some theory to set the base. Together with the proficiency levels, you can see concrete examples of the knowledge, of the skills and attitudes that are important for each of these competences, and also some additional examples based on the scenarios and based on the use cases. So if we look into the 5 competence areas, there are 2 types of competence areas. The Area 1, 2, and 3, so the information and data literacy, communication and collaboration, and digital content creation are so-called vertical competence areas. And these address the main reasons why people use digital tools and services. Then looking into the area, the 4th and the 5th area, so safety and problem solving, these are transversal areas that are cut across all different digital activities. So looking into the safety issues, again, looking into the problem solving, and many of these competences, so many of the competences in the 4th and the 5th area are also closely linked with the vertical competence areas. For each of these competence areas, like I said before, we have the specific competences, and here I put the examples for each of them. In this training, we're not going to go in depth into each of these, but it's important that you know that these exist and that you know where they are further explained. Same here for the digital content creation and the safety, and for the problem solving. Apart from the specific competences, we also have these 8 proficiency levels, starting from the foundation up to the highly specialized. And like I said also before, each of these has corresponding example and the use cases scenarios to better explain what that specific competence area means and what it entails. Important point to also mention about the DigComp as a reference framework is that it is a technology neutral description of digital competences. So this is something that perhaps is easy to overlook, that, you know, apart from having the digital competence, apart from knowing how to use digital skills, digital technologies, not all of it is necessarily technology connected. Well, it is in some case, but the DigComp wants to also explain this in the technology neutral way. Inspired by the DigComp, a few years after the first DigComp was created, the JRC also created a digital competence framework for educators, which is called DigComp Edu, and it was created in 2017. And this one is specifically looking into which digital competences are necessary for educators, as this is a category of workers that is also significantly impacted by the digital transformation and digital transition. I mean, just let's think about what happened with the COVID pandemic and the way how all the education and training activities suddenly had to shift online, and how many digital competences that also required and asked for educators to have. So with this, we are actually finalizing the first topic of today. So we covered the digital skills, digital literacy, and the digital competence framework. Again, like I said before, you have all the links on the Padlet and in the chat here. If you have any questions about the content so far, please feel free to also add your questions in the chat. And then I will propose that we go to our second topic, which is actually going to be the biggest one that we are covering today. And this is the digital inclusion. And to set the base to start thinking about digital inclusion, I would like to ask for your input. So can you give me one example, either personal or from somebody that you know, when you felt included or excluded from a digital environment? You can write it in the chat here. You can also write it on the Padlet, or if you feel comfortable, you can also unmute yourself and share it with everybody in the call. And if you need an example, I can also start by giving you an example that is actually from the first round of these iBOX training that we organized. So back in June, we had the same training like we're having right now. And while I was guiding the participants through the first module, we were looking at this video about how the offices are changing. And I didn't really think about the fact that me sharing a video, a 10-minute video, is perhaps not the best idea through Zoom, and that it depends also on my internet connection. It depends on the internet connection of the participants. The video might be lagging, and the whole activity might be actually pointless because you might not even see the main point. So not intentionally, I excluded some of the participants from the training without actually thinking that this is something that might be an issue. So we don't have to think about a huge example, but rather something that's simple, that is affecting a daily life, which is also, I think, a good and a huge example in itself, because it also shows how important digital inclusion is, and how easy it is to exclude somebody from the digital environment. And that doesn't mean that necessarily we are doing it intentionally, but it's very easy to do it unintentionally as well. Okay, I see in the chat that the mobiles don't read the QR codes. There is also the link in the chat. So for all the QR codes that we have on the slides, there is a corresponding link that is shared on the chat.
Yes, I know. I'm telling that sometimes people don't give the link. And for example, my mobile didn't read the QR codes. So that's an example.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I didn't check the timestamp, so I thought it was referring to the back when we did the first activity.
Sorry.
But yeah, it's a great example, and thanks a lot for sharing it.
You're welcome.
The QR codes. Would somebody else like to share another example? If you don't want to speak, you can also write it in chat. Okay, I see.
If you want, I can also
Yes.
take the floor. So, but I was thinking about today my Zoom application update, and it's true that I have a moment of panic because sometimes we don't keep up with the updates, and sometimes we don't know how to use it, and sometimes something happen, and, and then, I mean, it doesn't really exclude me from prevent me to participate, but the quality of my participation may be affected.
Yeah. That's also a great example of, a daily activity. We're all using Zoom more or less on a daily basis, or if not on a daily basis, we use it very often, and it's easy to freak out when there is a minor or I mean major update as well. If we also look into the boom of ChatGPT and when it's just came into our lives, and when suddenly we had to well, we didn't have to know how to use it, but if we don't really adapt, then so what is how are we going to be managing the digital environment? But basically, at that moment, I remember we were creating a new project about the overall use of generative AI in education, and we wanted to propose a training for the educators that we have in our network. And one of the categories that we were thinking to be a target group are people that are at the risk of exclusion from the AI economy. But basically, at that point, all of us were at the risk of exclusion from the AI economy, including the staff that was preparing this training, but also including everybody else. Okay, I see also in the chat some apps that need software update and you have an old mobile, it doesn't work. Yes, exactly. This is also a great example of if we look into the banking apps, which is something that is also considered super normal at the moment, and it's something that we're all used to. And then if you have a bit of an older phone and your bank has a new update and your app then doesn't work, then I mean you cannot basically access your banking details, and that's pretty important in a daily life. I'm also checking the Padlet in the meantime to see if there is something there.
Yeah, well, you check. Maybe I can bring another example. One of our members, it's for example, they launch a petition for the service not to be only online, because it's true that now that we are talking about the app of the bank, but it's true that we have a lot of services now, they are just online, and people that are less familiar with digital tools. It can be the registration to university, can be the bank. So daily services that everybody need to use, and that can really be a cause of exclusion.
Yeah, true. I was also thinking about some let's say a smaller example from a personal life. My neighbor was always really against social media networks, which is also completely fine. But right now, to access many news articles, it's easier if you have a Facebook account. So basically, he was sort of forced to open a Facebook account. He did it with a fake name and a fake picture just to sort of have his rebellious little movement there. But in order just to access the news articles, you have to have an account on social media, which then, if people don't agree with having an account on social media, which is, again, like I said, perfectly fine, you sort of lose access to the news if you want to read the news online. All right. I will move on now, but if you still think about some examples, feel free to write them in the chat. Feel free to add them on the Padlet. Important point that I didn't mention about the Padlet before is that this is something that we will also share with you later on, so you can also use it as a resource. So feel free to add your thoughts there as well, because it might be useful for you later on. Okay. So I mentioned before when I was talking about the overall digital skills and competences, how they became really necessary and crucial in basically every sector of the society and the economy, and they're actually they're representing a cornerstone of the social inclusion as well, which is also a big thing to say. But if just based on the examples that we were giving right now, you can really see it also put in practice. So They're being the cornerstone of social inclusion, of well-being, active citizenship. I mean, getting informed, using the banking app, employability, knowing how to use LinkedIn, knowing how to apply for jobs through LinkedIn, productivity, security, and overall growth. If we think about what happened in the early 2020 with the COVID-19 pandemic and the way how it accelerated the use of digital technologies, we can look at it actually as an essential emergency. And based on some research, so while we were creating this training, we were consulting actually a lot of different research and a lot of different literature about digital transformation, digital inclusion. And there is this very interesting research that says that basically this rapid use of digital tools during the COVID pandemic, so this rapid digitalization, has been characterized as the largest digital experiment, because basically everything had to be moved online, and we had to also rethink the use of digital technology in education and training on a global scale. Despite all of these advancements, despite the more and more, despite the increasing use of digital technology, digital tools, digital technologies, and digital solutions have also further increased the existing inequalities and even led to the new forms of exclusion, so the new digital vulnerabilities. If we look into the European Declaration on the Digital Rights and Principles for the Digital Decade, which was set in 2022, and it sets the European values and fundamental rights in the digital world. It states that everyone should be able to acquire all basic and advanced digital skills. And in this context, the education and training system have also been called on to support the development of digital skills of all citizens. Here, we're also looking to the NGOs and civil society organizations as non-formal education providers, and they're also addressing this need by supporting a rich and varied educational offer for young people and adults. Now, if you look into the definition of digital inclusion, here we are working with a definition that is proposed by the United Nations, which says that digital inclusion is equitable, meaningful, and safe access to use, lead, and design of digital technologies, services, and associated opportunities for everyone, everywhere. Another important point when we talk about digital inclusion, it's important that to conceptualize it from a cultural perspective. So looking into the existing literature, looking into existing research, there is a debate on whether the technology is dominated by the Western culture or whether digital tools can empower multiculturalism and support minority cultures. In this training, we're not going to go in depth into this area. We're not really looking into the cultural inclusivity of the digital tools, but it's also something that's good to keep in mind and good to be aware of. Overall, promoting digital inclusion needs to be multi-stakeholder approach. It has to be based on evidence, and it has to be based on existing data. And another important point is that the process of digital inclusion cannot be imposed top-down. I mean, just looking into the basic example of my neighbor who doesn't want social media networks, who doesn't want an account on social media network, it's not really a great approach if, I don't know, let's say I have power over him and I force him to have a channel on Facebook. It's a really basic example, but it doesn't necessarily make him digitally included, or it doesn't really enhance digital inclusion overall. Instead, digital inclusion needs to actively engage individuals that are most impacted by it, and to maximize the benefits of new technologies, to actually make sure that that everybody feels these benefits and that everybody looks into digital technologies from this benefit perspective. These digital technologies have to be perceived as inclusive, as useful, and as trustworthy. In the module 1, we also talked about some of the challenges that are linked with digital transition and transformation. And one of the big ones is actually the resistance to change, which we can also see as a challenge here too. So overall, it's crucial to integrate the viewpoints of marginalized communities that are excluded from the digital environments to be able to fully leverage the potential that the technology offers to both individuals and society. And I think it also goes without saying that the way how the digital technologies are evolving, our understanding and the definition of the digital inclusion within it also has to evolve. So, for example, what I was telling you before about the project that we have about the integration of the generative AI in education, and thinking about participants that are excluded from the AI economy. I mean, at that moment, we were all basically at the risk of exclusion from the AI economy. So the way how we are perceiving digital inclusion also change with the way of with the way how the technology is developing. To give you something concrete, to give you concrete tips and concrete tools on how to start working on the digital inclusion, we would like to propose this resource that was created by MediaBase, and the name of the resource is Get Started as DigiHelper. You also have a link on the Padlet. So MediaBase is the Flemish knowledge base for digital and media literacy, so the Flemish government, and they are working on helping the residents of Flanders and Brussels to use and understand digital technology and media. So using it actively, using it creatively, critically, and consciously, so that everybody can participate in society. And while this resource is looking specifically into the Belgian context, the tips the advices are very practical, so they can be applied in a variety of different contexts, either culturally, nationally, or also if we look into the different educational settings. So here you can see those 8 tips that are provided in this brochure, starting with the use of clear language. So especially when we think about the use of English, I know, for example, in my education, while I was taking English classes, we were always trained to use fancy connecting words and fancy terms, which is not something that really is super easy to understand necessary, or that is actually needed to spread the message effectively. So when we are creating a digital content, for example, we should make sure that the message is clear immediately, both online and offline, and that in that way people will know what is expected from them. So avoiding long sentences, avoiding complex words, avoiding jargon. Apart from here, apart from making the content more accessible for people that are perhaps not so digitally savvy, this is also a very good tip for when we want to involve participants, for example, with specific learning disorders, or just overall making the content more inclusive. The second tip is to make the website user friendly. I'm pretty sure all of you have an example of a website that was not really intuitive, or that was not really easy to use. There is also a checklist available in the brochure itself, which can serve as a guideline on how to make your website more accessible. Another thing is that you have to test the tools and activities. So, for example, if we are creating a digital learning resource like the iBOX training, before sharing it massively, before just putting it out there, This also has to be tested, and it has to be looked into through various different perspectives. And this is also what we tried to do in iBOX overall. While creating digital content, it's the best to test it with your target group, to test it with I don't know, the students that you're working with, or overall learners that might be engaged, and to make sure that everything is clear. Another tip, which also goes with the use of clear language, is to keep it simple. But here we're not just talking about the use of the language, but for example, if you want to create, let's say, an online learning platform, you have to have this registration form, and you have to put the registration in place. It's important that this is done in a simple way, because also, I mean, you don't want to lose some of the participants just because the registration process is unnecessarily complicated, but also at the same time, there is no there is not a real need for the registration process to be complicated as such. It's also important in this case that we make sure that the users only need to offer the minimal amount of data, because again, let's think about the data privacy. Let's think about how to be safe online and how to make our learners safe online. It's also often good. It's also always good to offer help. So if let's take again the example of an online learning content and an online learning platform. If we want learners to be active on the specific platform, if we want them to be engaged, it is important that we always clarify that the help is available. For example, if they get stuck through the platform, they cannot reach you through an email. It is also always good to have phone there available, so you can be reached out through phone, which also goes well with what Veronica was saying before about having, apart from having the online services, it's also always good to have offline services and offline way of communicating as well. And the last one is about the stimulation of media literacy. It doesn't necessarily mean that if you want to create digital content, you also have to create a specific course, let's say, on media literacy. But it is good to be aware of what kind of courses are already out there, what kind of resources are out there. For example, this brochure or any other simple tips and tricks that might support individuals that are perhaps insecure when it comes to the use of digital of the use of digital tools. So after this introductory part, after we covered what digital inclusion is, some tips on how to work on digital inclusion, and we gave some examples of how to be digital inclusive or an example of digital exclusion. Do you think you know what it means to be digitally excluded? I think a good way to find that out is to actually put it in practice. So I would propose a short activity where I would actually ask you to take the digitally excluded challenge. And while you are working on the challenge, you also have the link in the chat, and I will do the challenge together with you. But while you're working on the challenge, think about these guiding questions. So how did participating in this challenge make you feel? Did it give you a new perspective on digital exclusion? And do you think the challenge was useful in highlighting the issue of digital exclusion? Why or why not? You can also share your thoughts here in the chat or share it on the Padlet link. And I will open the challenge as well. So we do it all together. Can somebody just let me know if you see the challenge right now on my screen? Just not, okay. Thanks a lot, Cecile. All right, so when you click on the link in the chat, it's going to bring you to this page, and then just click on the Take the Challenge. And I will mute myself, so I also do the challenge while you're doing it. And let's do it in our own I hope you had enough time to do the challenge, and if not, you can still give a few more minutes to focus on this. And I would also like to invite you to share either on Padlet or share here in the chat, or just unmute yourself and let us know how did participating in this challenge make you feel. Is it perhaps broadening your perspective on digital exclusion? And do you think the challenge was useful in highlighting the issue of digital exclusion? I also put the questions, the guiding questions here in the chat as well.
So for me, it was a very interesting challenge because it highlighted the most common digital barriers that many people are dealing with. And as I'm wearing glasses, for me, the visual impairment one was very important. It spoke to me the most. I mean, because for me, of course, I have to wear glasses, but also to highlight like another problem that I have when I'm following online courses or attending meetings. If the brightness is too bright, if there is no dark mode that you can set up, and other adjustments that you can change so that it isn't tiring on your eyes, is something that also needs to be looked at. And I do remember when I was looking at presentations at university that were used with bright colors, and there was this distractive contrast of the background, and I couldn't pay attention to the text. I was only focused on, trying to protect my eyes from looking at the screen instead of looking at the information. So but it is indeed some of these things that we need to look into, thinking about the type of learners that we are addressing, and also to maybe see or inquire into specific needs the learners have in order to make them their participation in digital environments more inclusive.
Thank you very much for sharing, Katarina. Actually, later on, we will also be talking about the contrast, which is a super important point, and something that is not perhaps always the most evident one. And also here in the challenge, when we're the part about connectivity, I'm sure we were all already, somewhere out there trying to work with Google Maps, but the connectivity was not really great, which can lead to frustration. And it's actually in small examples like this where you can also see how important digital inclusion is, or how easy it is to be digitally excluded. Thanks a lot for sharing, and thanks also for participating in the challenge. In the meantime, I'm also checking the chat. I don't see anything there yet. I will just take that as a good sign, and that perhaps you're maybe still working on the challenge, or perhaps you will be sharing your thoughts later on. And like I said, for the Padlet, it is something that we want to share it with you as a resource later on. So feel free to add your thoughts there as well. This challenge was created by the European Training Foundation, by the Digital Collective and the International Training Center, and the whole idea was to show to maybe make all of us a bit more aware of what digital exclusion is, and how perhaps even not intentionally and not planned, we might be contributing to digital exclusion, or how we might be also digitally excluded. Is there somebody else who would like to share their thoughts? And if not, we can also move on to the next topic. All right. If you think about something that you would like to share, you can also do it later on. We will have some time at the end of the training as well. So looking more in detail in digital exclusion, and also based on the challenge that we just did all together, it's actually quite evident that there is no easy answer on who might be affected by the digital exclusion. Of course, there is tons of research done about digital exclusion, and the research can identify some of the major trends, but in reality, anybody can be faced with digital exclusion. This, the level of the digital exclusion is not always the same. It's not always impacting individuals in the same way, or perhaps not for the same duration. But the reality is that anybody can face digital exclusion. MediaBase, the same knowledge center that I showed you before, who created that brochure of the DigiHelper. They present an overview of different indicators, so socioeconomic and digital, that can determine whether somebody is digitally excluded. So if we look into the social indicators, here we can be talking about income, education, societal participation, agency, and overall well-being. And then if we look into the digital indicators, here we can talk about the access to digital services and digital technologies, or overall access to the internet, or the quality of the internet, attitude or motivation that individuals might have, the level of digital skills, communication skills, and soft skills. This is also showing the connectedness of digital skills with all the other skills as well. Autonomy, media character of different social networks, digital practices and routines, and also the amount of support that is available for somebody in their either in their circle, at their workplace, or wherever the person might be. If we look into what UNESCO is saying about digital exclusion, they identify 4 major barriers to digital inclusion, and those barriers are requiring holistic approach. So here we're talking about the lack of infrastructure, low income and affordability, limited user capabilities, and lack of incentives to go online. Another term that is very closely associated with digital inclusion and digital exclusion is digital divide, which represents a really big societal challenge nowadays. The term itself was introduced in the mid-90s. And at that point, it was defined as a gap that is separating individuals that have access to new forms of information technologies and those that did not. Today, we are looking into digital divide as a distinction between those who have access to the internet or other digital technologies and are able to make use of online services, as opposed to those who are excluded from those services. Overall, the digital divide has been described as a critical topic for social justice in the 21st century. And we were talking also last week about many benefits of the digital technology. For example, the way how digital technology can help in lowering the cost of access to educational services for some disadvantaged groups. For example, the individuals that live in the remote areas, the ones that are displaced, the ones that face learning difficulties. But at the same time, while this access to technology has expanded rapidly, the divide is still very present. Which again also really goes well with what we were just talking before about all these indicators and factors that might be putting somebody at the risk of digital exclusion. And in any case, although there has been a lot of advancements to address the digital divide is still something that's very present, and it was actually further intensified following the COVID pandemic. So back in 2020, when basically with this rapid shift to the online services, many organizations and governments have been emphasizing the concerns about digital divide, particularly in the context where a big part of the population had to work and study and access services and also socialize from home. So, not to be just negative about it, not just to be talking about digital exclusion and how easy it is to be digitally excluded. There are many things that we can do about it. Also, looking into the context of NGOs and civil society organizations, and it's important to remember that numerous initiatives and numerous projects already exist. So there are small things that we can do to make basically overall digital environment a bit better for ourselves and a bit more inclusive for somebody else. Another thing that is important to remember, something that I also mentioned before, is that digital divide is multifaceted, that it includes many factors, like access, affordability, quality, and relevance. So overall, bridging the digital divide is a challenge. It is something that requires a lot of work, and it requires a lot of attention to be given to. And overall, addressing it requires a coordinated effort from various different stakeholders. So looking into the NGOs, looking into governments, the private sectors, overall educational systems. But like I said, many things already exist. But since bridging the digital divide is something that is an ongoing process, it is important that we continue working on it. So let's take a stock of what is already out there. Let's investigate what kind of projects already exist. For example, there are many different EU-funded projects that are focused on bridging the digital divide in one way or another. For example, making the digital environment more accessible for learners with specific learning disorders, or overall making it more accessible for participants that might have some hearing problems or so on. But still, let's think about the fact that we can always do better, and we can always propose more projects, more initiatives, and work more on bridging the digital divide. Another example is digital literacy programs that many organizations already have put in place. So many different trainings, many different workshops and specific digital skills. Here again, if we look into the generative AI and the whole ChatGPT, there's a lot of resources out there on how to use it in an ethical way and how to use it in a way that is safe. Again, also engaging with local communities and advocating for the policies that promote a digital inclusion. One concrete example that I would like to give you today is an example of a project where All Digital is one of the partners. The name of the project is Our Digital Village. You can also see the link here on the slide, and it is also available on the Padlet. So Our Digital Village is an EU-funded project, so it's funded by the Erasmus program, and it aims to intervene in the rural areas by promoting the overall acquisition of digitals and transversal skills, and it aims to prepare people in those specific areas to face the challenges of the future. So we have partners from Italy, Greece, Poland, Romania, Portugal, and Romania, I think I said already, in Poland, that are working specifically in identified rural areas and are bringing specific ICT skills and ICT courses to the individuals in those communities. Important thing to say is that all of the content and basically all the activities in this project are done by co-creating and directly involving the target group. So at the beginning, before partners even started with the creation of the courses and the creation of the content, they sat down with different stakeholders in specific communities. So they involved the municipalities, they involved educators and teachers from the specific communities, and the learners to learners that are aged between 12 and 18, to see what they think is necessary. Of course, the situation was different in each of the countries, basically. In some of them, the need was more to focus on development of the basic digital skills, so overall how to use computers, especially when we think about perhaps older population. But in some specific communities, the need was more to focus on advanced digital skills, specifically looking into cybersecurity and how to be safe online. So on the website, you will also find, I think the training course is also available at this point. If not yet, it will for sure be available very soon. There is also the training kit, and there is also the full methodology guidebook that is showing you how exactly this was done and how the process of co-creation has been going on. I think it's a very good example of how the target group can be involved in the overall co-creation, and in, again, making sure that the digital technologies and the digital tools are perceived as something useful, as something trustworthy, and something that, you know, it's worth to spend the time on learning how to use a specific tool or specific technology. Now let's move on to the last point of today, which is something that also I hinted throughout the training, and it was also hinted by some of your answers previously. And we're going to be looking into the inclusive design. So if we start with the European pillar of social rights, and if we look into the first pillar, it states that everybody has the right to quality and inclusive education, training, and lifelong learning in order to maintain and acquire skills that enable them to participate fully in a society and to manage successful transitions in the labor market. This also, of course, involves the digital education and the digital transition. Also then looking into the digital education action plan, which was also mentioned in the previous module, it sets common vision of high quality, inclusive, and accessible digital education across Europe. It supports the adaptation of education and training systems to the digital age. So overall, while the transition to the digital education is something that is inevitable and something that has been put in place and that it has been going on for a long time now, actually, it has to be implemented in a way that is catering the needs of all individuals in an effective way. Another important document, another important directive here, and that I would like to draw your attention to, is the EU directive on the accessibility on the websites and mobile applications of public sector bodies, which was published in 2016, and it focuses on all websites, on all different applications and files of the public administration, or the ones that are created by the public money. This web accessibility allows everyone to perceive, to understand, to navigate, and interact with the internet in a good way. So they're proposing some simple changes that can make the websites and different applications more accessible. For example, being able to listen to the text when it's too dark to read, or adding the subtitles in the video to just make sure that we can see the videos in a noisy environment as well. How can we make sure that that the digital activities and tools are inclusive? Good starting point is to review what is already put in place. And for this, I would like to suggest a tool that is called the Digital Inclusion by Design Index, which was created by Digital. Digital is a coalition of companies, of different social organizations and governmental bodies in Belgium that are working together to enhance overall social inclusion in Belgium. Apologies for a short break. Talking for an hour and a half after just going through a cold is not always the best idea. But okay, we can go we can go back to the content. So this tool, I believe you also have the link in the chat. If not, it is surely on the Padlet. And it is it's a self-assessment tool that is based on 7 different criteria, which you can see here on the slide. Starting with the trust, accessibility, interoperability, continuous user involvement, the use of language, transparency, and the user journey. You go through this self-assessment tool. You have a bunch of questions to answer, to self-reflect on. It is also important to say that it's a quite a comprehensive tool, so it takes some time to actually go through the full list and to go through all questions, but it gives you it can give you a good insight into how inclusive your digital product is. For example, how inclusive your organizational website is. And it also gives you a different advice on how to remove obstacles for users when you're thinking about designing your digital product or service. So I would definitely invite you whenever you have time to check the tool and to see how inclusive your, for example, your websites are. Looking into inclusive design of learning and training activities, here it's important to give some attention to the universal design for learning. I will look into it specifically from the perspective of digital education, although this is not the only use where UDL is useful or can be applied. So overall, UDL recognizes that there are different ways of learning and that learners might benefit from different learning techniques. And it also emphasizes the three main principles: engagement, representation, and action and expression. So looking into the different means of representation, here we're talking about offering the content in various formats. For example, text, but that same content can also be shown as an audio recording or as a video to cater for different learning modalities. And also something that we were talking before about the web accessibility. And for example, when using a video, adding the subtitles, this is also another way to add multiple means of representation. Then looking into the multiple means of action and expression, here we are looking into how to allow learners to demonstrate their understanding through different methods. For example, written responses, audio recordings, or interactive simulations. And this is something that I also tried to put in place in these iBOX trainings by having Padlet as one mean of expression, by also using the chat, and by also trying to interact with you in a spoken way. And the last one is providing multiple means of engagement. So offering different choices, fostering collaboration, and promoting relevance. So real life use and real life examples, which helps to motivate learners and to sustain their interests in overall learning environments, but also specifically when we look into the digital learning environment. Like I said before, when we use UDL in digital environments, it's UDL is a good resource, good approach to use because it is flexible and because it can meet the needs of diverse learners. So applying it in the digital environment ensures that there is equitable access and that overall learning experiences can be optimized for if not for all individuals, at least we can broaden it up to more individuals and to more learners, regardless of their abilities, regardless of their learning style. So by using the UDL, digital content creators can design materials that are flexible, that are customizable. English is also a good, good skill to put in practice, but also accommodating diverse needs and preferences. So here's also exactly what I told you already. One important point that I would like you to remember and to take from this training about the UDL is that the harnessing the power of digital technologies is the key point of UDL. So overall digital tools and technologies tend to be flexible. They tend to provide different opportunities for personalized learning content, for individualization, and for removing the different barriers for learners. And overall, by applying UDL, we can foster inclusivity, enhance overall accessibility, and promoting active learning experience for different learners. To give you a concrete example of a project that is focusing on UDL, this is another project where All Digital is one of the partners. I also know that if you just go on the Erasmus Plus project results, a project search, and if you check for UDL, you will also find a bunch of other projects that are focusing on it, as it's a topic that is very, very common actually and very useful. Digital for All project is looking into how to make digital learning more inclusive in higher education. So how to make overall higher education's online learning environment more inclusive and more accessible, and it is doing so by focusing on the UDL. Here you can also see the website of the project. The project is still in the early phase, so right now we are finalizing the toolkit, and it's soon going to be available on the website as well. Later on, we are also going to be creating the short learning course to overall give a good overview of how to use UDL for in making higher education more inclusive. As for some advice on how to achieve inclusivity in digital activities, if we look into the design for accessibility, here we're talking about ensuring that the digital platforms and activities are accessible. For example, adding the alternative text for images, adding captions for videos, using the keyboard navigation options, overall ensuring the compatibility with different screen readers and other assistive technologies. And a good starting point when talking about accessibility is also checking the web accessibility initiatives and the web content accessibility guidelines, which also the links are put on the Padlet, as well. When we talk about the web accessibility, this also goes well with the example that Katarina was giving before about the contrast. There are also many different tools. For example, like coolers, which I will also put on the Padlet. For that one, I know it's not there, but it's a good contrast checker. So whenever you're creating a digital content, you can add the code of different colors that you want to use. So for example, the code of the background color and the code of the font of the text that you're putting. So you can check whether the contrast is sufficient. You can also see how it looks for different learners. You can also see how it looks if participants have glasses and so on. Another really important point that I would like to mention here is also the use of the right font size. So not using a font that is too small for anybody to read. I think overall we are moving from those PowerPoints that are cramped with text, and the font size is really small, but still it's easy to forget that even if you have a perfect vision, somebody else might not have it. So just make sure that the font size is it's bigger to make the content available for a broader audience. When we look into the text, we can also talk about the use of left alignment. I can see in the recent years there has been a lot of movement about this. We are slowly moving from the justified alignment everywhere to the more left alignment. You don't need to have a specific learning disability or anything similar to use for the left alignment to be easier for you to read. It is just it's just a natural way how the eye is moving. And so if we just include some of the simple steps, some of the simple things like that, we can make sure that overall content is more accessible and inclusive for everybody. I can also share that I'm still getting a lot of comments every now and then that the content that I create sometimes is not professional enough because I don't use the justified alignment, but we can still also see that there is progress, and more people are more accepting in using an alignment that is not only justified. Then, looking into the multilingual support, this is not something that is always possible. And for example, the iBOX training, the self-paced training, is available on the All Digital Academy, which for now is available only in English, as it's not always the easiest to translate all the content to all the different languages, but whenever possible, it is good to provide the content in multiple languages to accommodate speakers of different languages and to just make sure that the information goes to a broader audience. Here we can also look into the topics that are perhaps more challenging or more difficult, like the example that I was giving you before about the use of generative AI and integrating generative AI. When we started with this project, when we started with the training for educators on how to use generative AI, we decided to focus only on developing the content in English. But by doing so, we actually excluded a lot of audience because it's not a topic that is super easy to understand if you don't have some basic understanding of overall AI. And then the overall use of English, which is not always the language that everybody feels the most comfortable, also made some participants not continue with the course. So overall, whenever possible, it is good to provide different language options. The third advice is to use flexible communication and to offer multiple channels for communication. So using the chat, using the voice, using the video, and to optimize digital activities to work well on different quality of the internet connection. So ensuring that everybody can participate regardless of their internet speed or device. Another one is to provide clear instructions. This also goes really in line with the use of clear language that we were talking before when we went through the brochure that Mediava is proposing. So offering the clear instructions and support materials that help users understand how to participate in digital learning activities. Promoting diversity and inclusion in the content. It is important to ensure that digital content, but not exclusively only digital content. This goes to the overall content, but as today's focus is on digital, let's focus on the digital content. So it is important that that it reflects the diversity and that it promotes inclusivity by including a range of perspective, a range of identities and experiences. And for example, if you think about visual communication, if we think about visual representation, it is important that we don't reinforce, for example, gender stereotypes, or that we don't show women always in caring positions while we show men in positions of power, or for example, using photos or using different visuals of participants in a wheelchair only when we talk about accessibility or only when we talk about disability. It is important that we promote overall diversity and inclusive visuals, inclusive communication, and inclusiveness in the content. Another one is to address the privacy and security concerns. So respecting users' privacy, implementing data protection measures, and providing options for providing options on how participants can control where their data is stored. So giving making it transparent. Overall, on the level of the EU with the GDPR, this is more or less done in a secure way. But for example, if you're using a tool that you don't know where the tool is coming from, or where the tool was developed, it is always good to check their data privacy settings to make sure that before you use a tool with specific participants, before you're proposing it to your learners, make sure that you understand and make sure that what you're proposing addresses any ethical concerns that you might be having. So we went through a lot of content today. It was really charged. It's a really charged module, but at the same time we we wanted to make sure that while it is still on quite of a basic level, that it still provides a good understanding, and that we all leave the training with more or less same understanding and more or less the same basic knowledge. So for the key takeaways of today, we focused on the digital skills and digital literacy. We went through the basic digital skills, advanced digital skills, and overall, like I said, important point is that digital skills are not developed in a vacuum. Then we looked into the digital inclusion, digital exclusion, and digital divide. You also have all the resources that are linked with it on the Padlet as well. Another thing that I also told you that, so one of the main takeaways that I want you to take from overall iBOX training on the digital transition is that overall, the way how the digital technologies are evolving and the way how the digital tools are progressing, our understanding of the tools, our understanding of digital inclusion also has to evolve. Let's keep on working on digital, on bridging the digital divide. I showed you a couple of examples of the already existing initiatives, of already existing projects that are put in place. But it is important to keep in mind that the digital divide is ever present. And overall, while the transition to digital education is something that is inevitable, something that is in place, it has to be implemented in a way that that caters the needs of all individuals effectively. And with this, it brings me to the last activity of today, where we would like to hear from you. Again, like I said, there has been a lot of information shared today. Perhaps not everything was super new to all of you. I know that you also have a lot of different experience and a lot of different perspectives to share about digital inclusion. So I would like you to finish the sentence, or just share overall impression that you might be having. So the sentence is, I'm leaving this workshop and I'm taking with me. It can be a simple one word, it can be overall impression. You can share it on the Padlet, you can share it here in the chat, or if there is something you would like to share with us by speaking, feel free to also unmute yourself.
I was thinking how difficult when you were saying don't so that we should use the left alignment, and that doesn't mean that the text is not professional. And it's true that it's still something that I heard a lot. And I was thinking how difficult it is to break some stereotypes. And in our organization, so we say that we would like to be inclusive, but then I'm still struggling sometime in the civil society and the education sector because of that, because having a room that is accessible, it's complicated to find, because using some tools is not the ones that we are used to. The alt text, when I check now, I'm paying a little bit more attention, because we are trying, at least for that project, it's about inclusion, to add the alternative text in all social media posts, the images that we, our documents. And then I realize how not so common it is to find an alternative text in the images. I had a nice training about, it was about the accessibility of digital tools, and the trainer was explaining us how not so common is, for example, when you have to book something online, to have a form that is accessible. Sometimes you have to click on send the form to register for an event, or to buy something online, and then if you are blind, you cannot find it, because the form is not done in a way that the bottom is you can find it unless you can see it. So it's true that there is a lot to improve, and it's a journey, and yeah.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Veronica. I really like the conclusion of it's a journey. And also with the first activity that we did today about the digital inclusion and giving an example, this was also because I wanted to show you how easy it is to overlook some of these things. And like Veronica was saying, the alternative text, it is it is something that's easy to skip because it's not necessarily super relevant for us. So we sort of just overlook it and we just sort of move on. Same goes with the justified alignment or I don't know, putting a yellow text on the orange background because for some reason I can think that it is cool and it is actually terrible to read even for for everybody overall. So with the whole training, this was also the point to show you that there are some simple things that we can all do to make overall digital environment a bit more inclusive for everybody. Of course, then we can go more in depth. We can go in specific research. We can organize specific. We can focus on organizing activities for learners with specific disabilities. And I'm not saying that also applying any of the tips, any of the advices that we covered today is necessarily going to make the content inclusive and accessible for everybody everywhere. It's not a one size fits all thing. It always then comes to the individual personalization and to the further adaptation. But it is important that we start being aware of the little things that we can do and overall little improvements that we can make. Is there somebody else who would like to share something?
Yes, I would like to connect to the previous point when I was mentioning about the contrast display of the presentations when attending meetings or training courses. So for me now, it's good that I can try to refer on some of the inclusive design principles and tips to have a specific framework how I can try to make the content I create more inclusive, because before I was doing this on either intuitive level or what I saw from other classmates or colleagues. But when you have concrete ideas from experts who propose something, I think it's another effort that we can try to take together and making this a continuous journey for inclusive education.
Thank you very much, Katerina. Also, while you were talking, I shared a link to the Coolors tool that I was telling you before about the where you can check the contrast and where you can play a bit with the colors and with the overall design. Let me check if there is something on the Padlets. Nothing yet, but you can also feel free to share it even after the training. The Padlet will also stay open, and like I said before, it's going to be shared with you at the end of the training again as an additional resource. Let me give another chance if somebody else would like to speak, or I'll just take it as an example that I will just take it as a way that you're all very happy with the training and there is nothing additional you would like to say, which is also always a good feedback to have. But jokes aside, we would also really like to hear from you, as the whole idea is that this training, the overall iBOX trainings are something that is useful for the target group, and for that we need to know your feedback and we need to know how you're feeling about it. Before closing it, I also wanted to remind you that overall iBOX training, the self-paced one, is available through the All Digital Academy. You have the QR code here. There is a link, and it's also going to be shared on the chat. It's on the Padlet as well. So you can register for the course. You can follow the training on your own. We try to cover a lot of the content in these 2 hours that we have, but of course, then the self-paced training gives some more examples and some more activities. And like Veronica was saying, the third module is going to be this Wednesday, so on the 6th of November, same time. So it's another learning lunch. And thank you in advance for spending another lunch with me.